Captain Saheb. Jagat Singh found going to school as unpleasant as swallowing quinine or drinking cod liver oil. He was a wanderer, a vagabond, a drifter. Sometimes, he would head to guava orchards, where he would eat guavas while happily enduring the gardener's curses. Other times, he would explore the river, crossing to the nearby villages in a boat with the boatman. He enjoyed getting scolded. He never missed an opportunity to get yelled at. Clapping behind a rider's horse, pulling on the back of a tonga, and imitating the walk of elderly people were his pastimes. While he was too lazy to do any work, he was a slave to his vices, which could not be satisfied without money. Whenever he got the chance, Jagat Singh would steal money from home. If cash wasn't available, he had no qualms about taking utensils and clothes. There were glass bottles and containers in the house, and he sent them all, one by one, to the second-hand market. Anything of value from the old days that remained in the house was gradually sold off. He was so skilled and clever in this art that his dexterity and cunningness astonished everyone. Once, he even climbed onto the roof of his two-story house from the outside, using only the cornices, and came down with a large brass tray. The family didn't even notice a thing. Jagat Singh's father, Thakur Bhakt Singh, was a clerk at the local post office. After much effort, the officers had granted him a transfer to the city post office. However, none of Bhakt Singh's hopes were fulfilled in this new location. On the contrary, they faced the disadvantage of no longer receiving free vegetables, greens, or firewood as they did in the village. Here, they were the oldest residents but had no one to push around or command. In this situation, Jagat Singh's mischiefs added to Bhakt Singh's distress. On many occasions, he beat Jagat mercilessly. Despite being well built, Jagat would silently endure the beatings. Had he grabbed his father's hands, his father wouldn't have been able to move, but Jagat was not that audacious. Nonetheless, neither the beatings nor threats had any effect on him. As soon as Jagat entered the house, the family would break into chaos. His mother would rush at him, yelling, "Get out, get out." His sisters would hurl insults at him as if a bull had entered their home. The sight of him irritated the family. Their disdain turned him shameless. He had become indifferent to pain, sleeping wherever he could and eating whatever he found. As the family gradually discovered his methods of theft, they became more vigilant. Eventually, for an entire month, he couldn't succeed in stealing anything. He owed the charas dealer money, and the ganja seller began hounding him. Even the sweet shop owner started insulting him. Jagat Singh was in a tough spot. He spent his days and nights trying to find a way, but no opportunity presented itself. Finally, one day, fortune smiled upon him. Bhakt Singh returned home from the post office in the afternoon with a registered letter in his pocket. Fearing that a postman or some other worker might tamper with it, he had brought it home himself. However, upon arriving, he forgot all about it. Jagat, always on the lookout, searched his father's pockets and found the envelope, which had several stamps on it. He had previously stolen stamps and sold them at half their value. Without hesitation, he stole the letter. Had he known that the letter contained cash, he might not have taken it. But when he tore open the envelope and saw the banknotes, he found himself in a serious dilemma. The torn envelope screamed his guilt. He felt like a hunter who, intending to shoot birds, accidentally shoots a person. He was filled with regret, shame, and sorrow, but lacked the courage to face the consequences of his mistake. He placed the money back into the envelope and left the house. It was summer. The whole household was asleep, but Jagat was wide awake. There was no doubt that he would face serious consequences today. It wasn't safe for him to stay at home. He needed to leave for a few days until everyone's anger subsided. But staying in the vicinity wouldn't work either. Someone would surely find him, and he would be caught. He needed money to go far away. Why not take one note out of the envelope, he thought. They would know he had stolen the envelope anyway, so taking a note wouldn't make much difference. His father had money, they would have to give it up anyway. So, with that thought, he took out a 10-rupee note. But then another thought entered his mind. Why not take all the money and start a shop in another city? Then he wouldn't need to steal anymore. He would return home with plenty of money, and everyone would be amazed. Jagat opened the envelope again. There were 200 rupees in total. With 200 rupees, he could start a milk shop. After all, what does Murari's shop have besides a few large cauldrons and brass trays? Yet Murari lives in style, spending money freely, even gambling with 10 rupees per round. Jagat became so absorbed in this fantasy that he lost control, like a man swept away by a strong current. That very evening, he left for Bombay. The next day, Bhakt Singh was charged with embezzlement. In the parade ground of Bombay Fort, the band played while the handsome soldiers of the Rajput regiment performed their drills. Just as the wind shapes clouds into new forms, the commander shaped and reformed the soldiers. After the drill, a lean young man stepped forward to the commander. The commander asked, "What's your name?" The young man saluted smartly and replied, "Jagat Singh." "What do you want?" "To enlist in the army." "Are you afraid of dying?" "Not at all, I am a Rajput." "You will have to work hard." "I'm not afraid of that either. You may have to go to Aden." "I'll go gladly." The commander saw that he was a bold, determined, and courageous young man, and enlisted him immediately. 3 days later, the regiment set off for Aden. But as the ship moved forward, Jagat's heart was left behind. As long as the shore was visible, he stood on the deck, gazing at it with longing eyes. When the land disappeared into the sea, he sighed deeply, covered his face, and wept. For the first time in his life, he missed his loved ones. That small town, the charas shop, the outings, and the gatherings of friends all swam before his eyes. Who knew if he would ever meet them again? He became so restless that he wanted to jump into the sea. Jagat Singh spent 3 months in Aden. The many new sights fascinated him for a while, but old habits resurfaced. He began to miss his affectionate mother, who had always protected him despite his father's anger, his sister's scolding, and the disdain of his relatives. He remembered the time when he had fallen seriously ill. No one, not even his father or sisters, cared about him. Only his mother stayed by his side, soothing his pain with her sweet and loving words. He often saw her weeping late into the night, even though she was herself frail and ailing. Her service to him made her forget her own suffering. Would he ever see his mother again? He often wandered to the seashore, gazing at the endless waves for hours. For several days, he had wanted to write home, but shame and guilt held him back. Finally, one day, he could wait no longer. He wrote a letter, begging forgiveness for his crimes. The letter was filled with devotion from beginning to end. In the end, he reassured his mother with these words, "Mother, I have caused a lot of trouble. You all grew weary of me. I am truly ashamed of my mistakes and promise you with all my heart that if I live, I will achieve something worthy. Then, perhaps, you won't hesitate to call me your son. Bless me, so I may fulfill my vow." He sent the letter and anxiously awaited a reply, but a month passed without any word. His anxiety grew. Why wasn't there a reply? Was his mother ill? Perhaps his father, in anger, had refused to write back. Could some other calamity have occurred? There was a tree in the camp where some soldiers had placed an idol of Shaligram. Every day, some devout soldiers would offer water to the idol, and Jagat often mocked them. But today, like a madman, he went before the idol and bowed his head for a long time. As he sat there, lost in thought, someone called his name. It was the office messenger, carrying a letter for him. "You have to stay. You will soon be deployed." "Has the war started?" "Ah, then I can't go home." "When are we leaving?" "Very soon, in 2 or 3 days. 4 years passed. Captain Jagat Singh became one of the most valorous soldiers in the regiment. In the most challenging situations, his courage only increased. When everyone else's resolve failed, it was he who overcame the challenge. In every attack, he led the charge. Despite the dangers, he remained unflinching, and at the same time, he was humble, serious, and cheerful. All the officers and subordinates admired him. It was as if he had been reborn. His superiors trusted him so much that they consulted him on every matter. Everyone spoke of his bravery, how he had set fire to the Germans' magazine, how he had saved his captain from machine gun fire, how he had carried a wounded soldier on his back to safety. It seemed as if he didn't care about his own life, as if he was searching for death itself. Yet, every night, when Jagat had some free time, he would sit alone in his tent, thinking of his family, and shed a few tears. He sent most of his monthly salary home, and there wasn't a single week when he didn't write a letter to his mother. His greatest worry was for his father, who was suffering in prison because of Jagat's crimes. How he longed for the day when he could bow at his father's feet and beg for forgiveness, and his father would place his hand on his head in blessing. 4¼ years passed. It was evening. A crowd had gathered at the gates of Naini jail. Many prisoners had completed their sentences, and their family members had come to take them home. But old Bhakt Singh sat in his dark cell, his head bowed in sorrow. His back was hunched, and his body had wasted away. He looked like a sculpture of a man struck by famine. His term was up, but no one had come from his home. After all, who was there to come? An old but sturdy prisoner came up to him, shook his shoulder, and asked, "So, Bhagat, has anyone come from home?" In a trembling voice, Bhakt Singh replied, "Who is there at home?" "But you are going home, right?" "Where is my home? Are you just going to stay here?" "If they don't throw me out, I will stay right here." For the first time in 4 years, Bhakt Singh thought of his exiled and estranged son, whose actions had brought about his ruin, destroyed his honor, and left his home in shambles. The memory of him was unbearable. But today, sinking into a sea of despair, Bhakt Singh clung to that very memory, like a drowning man grasping at a straw. Who knew what had become of the poor boy? He might be terrible, but he was still his son, the last remnant of the family. When I die, at least he will shed a few tears for me. He will give me a handful of water. Oh, how I never treated him with love. The slightest mischief would cause me to descend on him like a demon. Once, I hung him upside down just for walking into the kitchen without washing his feet. How many times did I slap him just for raising his voice? I had a gem of a son, but I never respected him. This is my punishment. Where love is absent, how can a family survive? Morning came. The sun of hope rose in the sky. Its rays were soft and sweet. The breeze was pleasant, the sky lovely, the trees lush and green, and the birds sang beautifully. All of nature was painted in the colors of hope, but for Bhakt Singh, there was only darkness. The jail officer arrived. The prisoners stood in a line, and the officer began calling names and issuing release papers. The prisoners' faces lit up with hope. When their name was called, they happily went to the officer, collected their papers, bowed in thanks, embraced their fellow prisoners, and then walked out to their waiting families. Some people threw coins in celebration, others distributed sweets, and some gave gifts to the jail staff. Today, these men, once considered the lowest of the low, were behaving like saints. At last, Bhakt Singh's name was called. With his head bowed, he slowly approached the jailer, collected his papers, and walked toward the gate, as if he were walking into the sea. Once outside, he sat down on the ground. Where would he go? Suddenly, he saw a soldier on horseback approaching the jail. The soldier was dressed in a khaki uniform, with an embroidered turban on his head, sitting proudly on the horse. Behind him was a carriage. The jail guards, upon seeing the officer, stood at attention and saluted. Bhakt Singh thought, one man is so fortunate that a carriage has come for him, while I have nowhere to go. The soldier dismounted and walked straight toward Bhakt Singh. Bhakt Singh looked at him carefully, then stood up in shock and exclaimed, "Oh, son!" Jagat Singh. Jagat Singh fell at his father's feet, weeping. The story ends here.
This story was originally written by Premchand, a legendary author of Hindi literature almost 100 years ago. Do let us know if you like the story. If it so happens that you did not like the story, even then, please let us know your choice so that we can find something you would like to listen. If you like the story, tell your friends as well. If you want to enjoy more stories like these from so many other Indian authors, subscribing the channel would make it easy. Bye for now.